course, the crowd wants Reed to go for it. Wouldn't be surprised if he did on 4th down and 1.
So, anyways, with that, time yours.
Welcome to 4th and 1. I'm Todd Palmer, joined by Nick Jacobs, and we got a victory edition of the podcast. So that's the good news. We do not have an AFC West championship edition, though, because the Miami Dolphins could not get the job done at the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chiefs' magic number remains 1. If they win any of their 4 remaining games, or if the Chargers lose any of their remaining 4, the Chiefs will win a 7th AFC West title. It's going to happen. I think the much more interesting race now is, can the Chiefs win out and do the Bills trip themselves up, and can Kansas City get the number 1 seed to bye and home field throughout the playoffs again? Is that what you're focused on most these next couple of weeks, or are you still trying to flush the fact that the Chiefs got outscored 28-7 down the stretch in the final half and change out in Mile High Stadium?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is you're looking at what can they get the number 1 seed, and can the Bills stumble along the way? I mean, the Bills got a big favor with the way the Dolphins struggled against the 49ers, and then the Dolphins having Tyreek aggravate his ankle in that game, and then playing on this upcoming Saturday. So it's going to be two West Coast trips and then a trip up the coast. I think the Dolphins are pretty spent right now. So I think the Bills are going to be getting a struggling Dolphins team on minimal rest. So I think the Bills have it in their favor. The game is, I think, is going to end up deciding the 1 seed is going to be when the Bills play the Bengals on Monday Night Football in a handful of weeks. Yeah,
I mean, the Bills get a couple Sunday nighters back, or Saturday games back to back, and then I think the one that everybody, you're going to need to circle is definitely that trip to Cincinnati. All of a sudden, Chiefs fans are going to have to be Bengals fans. The nice thing would be if Miami, which is going to probably be a little bit desperate because all of a sudden they're in the 6th spot, right? The Jets are still lurking. The Chargers are still lurking. Both of them a game back. New England potentially, depending on what happens on Monday Night Football, could also be lurking a game back. And obviously the win today, the Chargers would have the just like the Bills over the Chiefs, they'd have the tiebreaker in that situation if it came down to a head-to-head. So I think Miami's going to be a little bit desperate, given the situation, because they're now fighting for their playoff lives rather than for a division title. But if they want to keep their division hopes alive, they've got to take care of business. The nice thing would be if Miami could win and if the Bengals could win and the Chiefs could win out, then the Raiders game wouldn't matter and they'd be able to rest players then too. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think the Chiefs, as much as any team, would benefit from a bye, in part because, man, I just think the fewer times that defense has to be on the field in the playoffs, the better off the Chiefs are going to be. How dispiriting was the defensive performance today? Or did you see some positive things like the 6 sacks that maybe you're not as down on it as most people seem to be?
I mean, everybody had different expectations. It was coming into the morning. I thought the Chiefs probably win that game. Maybe I was like, hey, it could be anywhere between 20 to 27. I thought they could score. And I thought the Broncos would be somewhere around maybe 16 to 20 range. And that's kind of what I thought coming into the morning. I thought it was going to be a struggle like the Rams game just because of how good that Broncos secondary is and how good their pass rush can be at times. I knew their run defense wasn't as good as the Rams, but I mean, collectively, the Broncos were in top 5 in a lot of key categories like red zone and, holding opponents' points per game down. Because nobody, I think people need to understand this part of it. No other NFL team has scored that much against the Broncos defense this season. None. The closest was the Raiders at 33. So, I mean, like this is normal for them.
Right. But I mean, in fairness too, I mean, the defense gave up the 28, but they also scored 7. Well, so, 6, 7, depending on how you want to count it, with Willie Gay's touchdown, which kind of ends up being the difference in the game. I mean, I think the Chiefs offense performed about what you expected them to. I think what was disappointing was how well, I mean, aside from giving up a few first downs on the first drive, the offense and the defense both played pretty well up until like the final 3 minutes of the half. And, when you're up 27-0 against a bad football team, you don't expect to suddenly have it be 27-21. And, it kind of reminded me of last year's game, right? Where the Chiefs were the better team. They should have outclassed them. And then it took a defensive score in that game too, much more dramatic in that case, but to pull it out just like it did this week.
Well, and the other part that I still personally take into play here, and I don't think Chiefs fans still to this day kind of accept this part of it, is they get every team's best shot. Every team gets amped up for the Chiefs. And like there was, I know everybody saw when the Chiefs went up 27-0. Like, okay, this one's in the bag, this one's over. But I'm just telling you, like, I mean, the Broncos knew if they could show some life against the Chiefs, that there was hope for their season and for some of their jobs next year. Nathaniel Hackett needed a performance like today to happen for him to potentially even remotely have a chance of keeping his job when the season ends. Like he needed to say, hey, here's the elite of the AFC West, and here's one of the elite teams, and here's what we're able to do against them. We're building. See, we're building something here. And like that's what that Broncos team needed. So once that interception happened, that turnover happened, and they had that lightning bolt, like that's when they woke up from their sleepwalk, because in all honesty, that first interception didn't happen. The Broncos would have sleptwalked the entire way, and then that would have been the end of that football game, more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first games, maybe not one of the first games, but this game, it was apparent how young the Chiefs were in the secondary, I thought. I thought as the game went along, look, the Broncos had protection issues, right? And so a mediocre Chiefs pass rush got a lot of pressure, including the 6 sacks, and so from that standpoint, they did what they needed to. A lot of them, I think, were still kind of covered sacks, but there was some miscommunication. There were some times that they got confused and left Jerry Jeudy in particular wide open, in some red zone situations and things like that. I mean, where does is that concern creeping up? Are you seeing enough from this secondary as the season goes along to make you think that a month from now, when the Chiefs are in must-win mode, because it's in the playoffs, that this secondary is going to answer the bell? Or are you looking at it and saying, man, when they face some of these elite offenses, in the playoffs, the Chiefs are in trouble?
The Bengals game, I feel like, gave the fan base a reality check of where some of these rookies are. And part of what I'm saying with that is that when they face the caliber of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, or for the Bills when they face, Diggs, and when they're going to face Davis and McKenzie and that grouping where there's multiple receivers who can take over a game like that and athletically can match them or beat them, they're going to have problems. And Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to make a decision. Do I want to play a lot of zone coverage and just, not give up explosive plays and, take the paper cuts? Or does he want to manufacture pressure like he tried to do at times, especially early on those third downs when he kept blitzing over and over again to try to get pressure to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands? So, I mean, that's the tightrope he's going to have to walk, because he doesn't necessarily have a front four pass rush that can routinely do it on their own. I mean, Chris Jones and Dana were both getting that left guard, the rookie left guard, on a couple of those, and that was causing some of the problems. And then, like you said, I mean, they had a couple free blitzers when they were manufacturing off the edge with Snead and Thornhill to get a couple other ones. But I mean, the biggest concern I have with that defense right now is that the Broncos and Bengals in back-to-back weeks have picked on Josh Williams. Like they've gone after him, and they've gone after Thornhill. And whether it's an open space or whatever, those are the two key components of who they're going after in that Chiefs secondary. Trent McDuffie, I understand there's 2 plays that people are going to remember when the football hit him in the face mask, and then the other one that they called the PI on him. I totally get all that, but like they're not picking on him the way that they pick on Josh Williams and try to match him up right now.
And honestly, I don't blame McDuffie one, he's falling down, on the one where the ball hits him in the face mask. And so that's an awkward play. The pass interference, same thing. Both of those were awful, awful throws, just terrible. I mean, so bad that if you're an NFL wide receiver or defender, you would never expect the ball to be where it ended up. So, I mean, I don't blame McDuffie for getting a little bit confused, because I don't think the ball was where Russell wanted it to be, or where anyone on the field thought it was going to be, or where it needed to be. So, I think the NFL does have an issue where rewarding quarterbacks for throwing terrible deep balls in that situation and giving them a 30, 40-yard penalty for Russell Wilson throwing an awful wounded duck that was short and that was too far inside, and there was nothing good about the pass at all. To reward the offense for a bad play is not a great look for the NFL. But I don't know. McDuffie's not high on my list of concerns, right? But they obviously feel like Joshua Williams has passed Jalen Watson, and they traded Rashad Fenton away, and he had his issues too. But I mean, I just worry that that young secondary could have their confidence shaken if they don't start having some better performances here down the stretch.
Yeah, it's probably going to happen, and they're going to get tested in the playoffs, and they're going to struggle some in the playoffs. It's all going to come down to where that Chiefs pass rush is at when playoff time hits. Can that front four get the pressure, or can it? And more than anything else, are they going to get Brandon Williams up to a certain point where he can be the one tech and be able to make a difference? And if they really want to get greedy and aggressive, figure out some packages on rundowns where you have Danny Shelton and Brandon Williams out there together, and you have Chris Jones at an end spot with either Karlaftis or Frank Clark rotating in at the other end spot, and you try to stop the run against some future opponents that way. But I mean, that's another wrinkle that they may need to throw in the week and months ahead.
I am not convinced that they remember Danny Shelton is on the practice squad.
No, they know he's there. They just, I don't know if he's ever. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to get off. I don't know if he's going to get off practice squad unless there's an injury at the one tech spot that they would be forced to bring him up at this point.
Right. There's some reason that they don't feel like he can help the team as much as the guys that are already on it. But there's some guys I get that Joshua Kando plays a different position, but I don't know, man. I mean, like you said, you've got some flexibility with Jones to bounce him outside and stuff like that. It's not like Joshua Kando's giving you anything this year either, right? You're not playing Malik. Right. Wait, I'm
saying in general. That's it.
But he's on the active roster, and he's
I'm just saying he's a glorified special teams performer.
Yeah, and a wasted roster spot right now.
Just like Jack Cochran. I mean, there's 5 guys on that roster right now that are just on there purely for special teams, and they bring absolutely nothing to the team otherwise.
And special teams has clearly, been a strength of the team this year. So why wouldn't you dedicate 10% of your roster to it? Now,
that's me throwing some shade right there.
Yeah, no, I caught it, and I tried to throw some back. I think it's clear at this point that the defense remains the Achilles heel of this team. How concerned are you about the 3 interceptions, though? Because this is not the first time we've seen Patrick Mahomes get a little loose and a little cavalier with the ball. And he's said it 3 or 4 weeks in a row. I got to eliminate that one bad play, here and there. Today there were 3. I'm going to put it this way. I'm just still not that worried about it. I think, obviously if you throw 3 interceptions, you're probably not going to win in the playoffs, but, it stinks, the 2 interceptions late in the first half. Obviously it helped fuel the comeback and gave the Broncos life in that game. But push comes to shove. I think we've seen enough from Mahomes to know that He's able to overcome his mistakes. He's able to learn from his mistakes. And when the pressure's really on, he rises to the occasion more often than not. I know the AFC Championship game last year happened, and things like that. I know he's lost 3 times to the Bengals again, but they were all field goal games and 2 of them were on the road. I feel like Patrick Mahomes has earned, his track record suggests that this isn't going to be an ongoing problem, but I get why people are freaking out because the turnovers have been an issue all season for this team.
What I'll be interested to watch on the coaches' film is what coverages they were running at the time whenever they had those interceptions. Because I know Jewel got 2 of them, and I think Pat thought he was getting him to look off and getting him to kind of adjust his zone a little bit. And Jewel didn't bite as much as Mahomes thought he was going to, and he made 2 impressive picks on those. The Surtain one that I want to see I won't know till I see all the route formations combined together, the whole route combinations combined together. Just where Kelsey was out on the play, if Juju was out there at that time, because I know Sky Moore, the fact it was thrown behind him. I'm wondering if Sky was supposed to sit, or was there a guy behind him, or what was happening in there that where him and Mahomes were on the same page, and Surtain just makes a heck of a play and puts his hand underneath to intercept it. There are
It was really reminiscent too of the interception in the end zone in the Rams game, where I think Pat was trying to chuck it into the ground to avoid a penalty and just got a little careless with it. Just didn't do a good enough job and gave the defender a chance to make a play.
Now there are some things with the Broncos defense that they took from the Bengals the week before. Once I see the coach's film, I'll be able to confirm that's my suspicion's probably right, because there was a couple times when Chiefs were doing the rollouts there out of the bunch formation, and Mahomes ended up taking 2 sacks on the backside each time. They were rolling out to, 1, move the pocket and take away the blitz, but 2, they were trying to get Kelsey into space a little bit, or get one of the other, or get Smith-Schuster or somebody into space, and they were dropping their zone just like the Bengals do to Kelsey's side to double him in their own way, where they're dropping one of their guys who look like he's blitzing back to take away Kelsey. So once that happened, Mahomes held on to it, and then there was a blitzer coming backside, and he saw it, and he had to take the sack on the first one. And they'd lifted that from the Bengals. That much was pretty clear on that one. So, I mean, part of the thing is when he did the no look underhand to McKinnon to try to spark him and to do that, there have been times in previous games when Pat does that. He gets a little bit braver when he knows he's going against an opponent that it's not going to burn them against, for him to be able to have a couple mistakes. I know he doesn't like to have mistakes, but I'm just saying he played a little bit freer and looser than I think you would have if he's playing the Bengals or another, higher caliber opponent.
Right, and that's what I mean. I think his decision making would change if that was the Bills or if that was a playoff game.
Right.
I mean, and it's weird. I mean, like obviously when the Chiefs go 3 and out, and Tommy Townsend had an underrated game. Flipped the field a couple times with his punts, and when they kick the ball back to the Broncos and it's 27-21, at that point you're just hoping the defense doesn't make a catastrophic mistake and fall behind there. But they didn't. I mean, Andy praised the defense a lot in the post game, which was odd to me because I did not think the defense played particularly well, especially considering how bad the Broncos had been this season. And the fact Cortland Sutton's out, and they were missing some of their weapons. But I do think that, Patrick Mahomes still threw for 352 yards. He still completed, 67% of his passes. He still had a vintage Mahomes moment with that touchdown. He completed 9 passes to Juju Smith-Schuster, which I think is a great sign moving forward. I think he's clearly becoming a guy that that is the outlet that he needs when teams are taking away Travis Kelce on plays or in situations. And he's becoming that reliable target. Marquez Valdes-Scantling continues to disappear at times, but he seems to in close games late, he seems to make a play when he needs it. Pat at least looks to him every once in a while. I think there's enough there to still believe that this team can be the number one seed and can make a playoff run. But I don't know that we're ever going to see the consistency, that you saw from the 2019 team that won the Super Bowl, or the 2020 team before the offensive line got decimated.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is their lack of speed at receiver. With Mecole Hardman being on IR until this week when he hopefully comes back, and Kadarius Toney, who's hopefully going to be back from the hamstring issue, like it'll make a world of difference for that offense, because there was times today, like they wouldn't have run the fullback dive if they have Mecole Hardman. They would have run a little wide receiver screen out there. They would have run a jet sweep, and they would have converted. Or if they were in the red zone, they would have ran some jet sweeps or some of that stuff with Toney or Hardman. So they've missed a part of that of their offense. And there's been some times if like last week when the Bengals ran that cover zero, Mahomes just chucked it up to Valdez-Scantling. He would have thrown that to Mecole. Mecole would have been in that spot, and that would have gone to Mecole or Kadarius Toney. So, I mean, having that back is going to – I think that'll change the dynamic of the offense. But in the grander scheme of it, what's honestly happening is when teams take away Kelsey, Mahomes only trusts Juju Smith-Schuster or maybe McKinnon in the flats on a check down to be able to help him convert. He didn't feel comfortable with Sky. He doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with Valdez-Scantling, and so I think that plays a role in it. If Tyreek was still on the Chiefs and out there doing that, like the Bengals game goes differdifferently, the Bills game earlier this year goes differently, the Colts game goes differently, and the Chiefs would have put the hammer down there up 27-0, and like it would have been different each and every time. So I mean, all those combining factors. I mean, in the grand scheme of it, long term, the Chiefs are going to need more speed at receiver to balance with the possession of what Juju Smith-Schuster could bring. Because Juju Smith-Schuster, he's there to take away part of the reps that Kelsey has. Because if you notice, Kelsey's stamina isn't the same as what it used to be. He wears out a little bit quicker now than he used to. But given what he's done in his career, like that's to be expected. But you just need to. You got to have him on somewhat of a pitch count, and that's where Juju Smith-Schuster comes in to kind of help in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the man has more yards than any tight end in NFL history his first 140 games. It's crazy the stats he's putting up, and I get to a degree that the positions change, but my man, Travis is going to be 34 soon, so it's no shock that he's slowing down, but
that's he remains. Problem. They just can't keep running the offense through him long term. That's not a knock on him. He needs help.
Yeah, no, and you want him to have help because that will also mean that he can stay at an elite level for another 3, 4, 5 might be a stretch. He'll be 38 by then and stuff like that. But if you want to extend his career, you have got to take some of the load off of him. He's had 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. No other tight end in NFL history has ever had more than 3 in a row or more than 4 in their career. He needs 15 yards to pass Shannon Sharp for the 4th most touchdown or 4th most yards by a tight end ever in history. He's already up there with Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, and Jason Witten among the elites. But yeah, I mean, they need more production. And I do think that Mecole and Kadarius, we've talked about this the last couple of weeks. I think the offense changes when they get back in there, especially with the dynamic that Isaiah Pacheco brings, because look, like you said, it's still the straight line speed, things like that. I mean, the ability to, he is what he is in terms of a running back, but it was fun to watch him just truck Kareem Jackson and help put that game away on the last drive, man. We haven't seen that since Kareem Hunt was in the backfield for the Chiefs.
Well, and I would dare to say that physical of a run in that way at that speed, I haven't seen that since Larry Johnson on his 400 carry season and before that. Like he looked a lot like Larry Johnson, just running straight ahead and just did not care what was in his way. And like I've said on here before, I think when I watch Pacheco run, he just reminds me so much of Marion Barber back in the day. Like that's his running style, man.
I was gonna say that the guy that came to mind was also Barry Word. But I'm dating myself a little bit there. That's going way back because he's not as big as like Christian Okoye, but he reminded me of those early 90s Schottenheimer backs who were just battering Rams between the tackles.
Yeah, it's just for him size-wise, I don't know. I don't know if he'll be able to do that 4 or 5 years down the road. Like, I mean, it's great that he's running angry right now, and I appreciate it, and I love seeing it. But, I mean, long term, I mean, we'll get into it during the offseason, but that's not going to be sustainable for him, 3-4 years down the road.
There's a reason the shelf life for NFL running backs is about 3 years. And you're seeing it.
And they don't run the way he does. So
right. And you're seeing it right there with him. But look, I mean, were there a lot of things to clean up? Yes, but they went on the road against a divisional opponent and won a football game, and we're up 27-0 in the football game. Again, it's hard. We're nitpicking at this point. I mean, they played an atrocious game in pretty much all phases and lost by 3 at the Colts in week 3. In week 6, they played arguably, clearly one of the other best teams in the league. Only gave up 24 to the Bills and lost by 4. Then they went on the road in December and lost by 3 at the Bengals. I mean, it's not a stretch to think that this team, to believe that this team is capable of going on a run. And obviously we want to see perfection every week, and I mean, I think that, like I said, we nitpick right now, but they're going to beat the Texans. I imagine they're
Texans had a strong showing against the Cowboys.
They did
a really strong
They
showing.
did, but I've made my feelings about the Cowboys known in weeks past. And look, I don't think that they can go down and just automatically win it, but I think the Chiefs will go down there and outclass them. I still, for me, the shortcoming for the Cowboys is always going to be Mike McCarthy as their head coach. I will take Andy Reid going to Houston with a chance to clinch an AFC West championship every time. I don't think there's any way that Andy Reid lets them not be prepared when they know if they go down by 3:30 tomorrow, by 3:30 next Sunday, they can be the AFC West champions for the 7th straight year, and they can take one step closer to potentially having the number 1 seed, depending on what Buffalo does these last 4 games. There's no way that I see Andy Reid going down and getting outclassed in Houston. I just don't see it.
No, I don't think it's going to happen, but I didn't think the Broncos offense would score as many points as they did today, but there they were.
Oh, I mean, I didn't think they'd scored 28, but I was pretty sure they'd score more than their season average of 14 or whatever it was. So, that's just because I've watched this defense too much. I don't have a lot of faith in it. But when you got Patrick Mahomes, you can keep your faith in him. How's that?
Yeah, as long as they keep him upright and don't let him get hit a ton.
Yeah. Well, and look, I also, last point I want to make is I think this game is different if Orlando Brown doesn't have a false start when they got into the red zone or got near the red zone and they finished that first drive in the end zone and then finish the second drive in the end zone, right? If they're up 35-0 instead of 27-0, or if they just get up 14-0 and to me, that still remains the key for the Chiefs and this defense. When the Chiefs can put the hammer down early, like they did it, I mean, like you think about San Francisco when they were able to get a big lead there in the early in the game, and they were able to put the hammer down on them. They didn't do it this game because of the turnovers, but that's when the Chiefs are at their best, and that's the team that I think you want to see more of this last month of the season as you go into the playoffs, if you're thinking that this team can finish the year in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, they've got, let's see, let me count it up here real quick. I mean, they got 4 more games to figure it out and get themselves in a position to where they can, they're up to a sustainable level whenever they potentially get into the playoffs. Because looking at the conference right now, the Chiefs would play the Chargers.
Yeah, right now. Chiefs Chargers right now.
Chiefs Chargers, Ravens, Dolphins, Titans, Bengals.
Yeah, I think that's going to shift over the next 4 weeks. And potentially significantly. But I think the Chiefs and Bills are going to be some combination of the first 1 and 2 seeds.
More than likely.
That's the way that's going to end. And although, I mean, the Bengals, they're lurking there. If they can beat the Bills, they can sneak into that 2 spot. And if the Chiefs stumbled, I mean, the Bengals aren't out of it either. If they can, so it'll be interesting. But I think those are the 3 best teams. And I think it's going to be a dogfight once we get to the playoffs in the AFC, because I only one team can go to the Super Bowl, but there's 3 or 4 teams that I think are capable of it. So
yeah, as long as the Ravens hold on here the next couple of weeks against the Browns, Falcons, and Steelers, I'm beginning to think that Bengals Ravens game is going to more than likely be the Sunday night football game.
Yeah, because I think there's a chance they'll decide the AFC North and
playoff seeding for the AFC.
Again, yeah, the Bengals are going to have to take care of business. And that would include beating the Bills probably to be in that position. So, but like last year, it worked out pretty well for the Chiefs down the stretch. And we'll see if it does again this year.
Yep, that's all I got.
All right. Same here. Take care, kids. You guys have a good week.